Live from Florida, this is BBC News. US President-elect Donald Trump begins the process of selecting his future government. Kamala Harris concedes the race, promising to help ensure a peaceful transfer of power, and President Biden prepares to address the nation.
We'll be looking at the new political map of the US, looking at how Donald Trump won and what went wrong for Kamala Harris.
And after Donald Trump's astonishing political comeback, we'll be taking a look at what his second presidency might mean for America and the rest of the world.
And I'm Regina Vaidyanathan in London with the rest of the day's news. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer arrives at a European summit to discuss EU security in Budapest. More Israeli airstrikes in southern Beirut as more than 40 people are killed in a bombing in the east of Lebanon. The Bank of England's widely expected to cut the UK's interest rates again, with a decision due in an hour.
Hello, I'm Helena Humphrey. A very warm welcome to you from Mar-a-Lago here in Florida, where, of course, it is a day after the presidential election, that victory for President-elect Donald Trump. Now the process of the political transition gets underway. Of course, the nation has chosen their president. Now the president needs to begin that process of selecting his cabinet. A few names have already been mentioned along the campaign trail. Questions being asked about whether his billionaire backer, Elon Musk, could be in with a chance of being named to the cabinet. Donald Trump has said previously that Elon Musk could serve to clear up, quote unquote, government waste. And in a photo tweeted out by Tiffany Trump, you can see him there in that family photograph alongside members of Donald Trump's family. Another name which is clearly in the running, RFK Jr., the man who ran in the presidency, who became a backer of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has said that RFK Jr. could serve in a health agency. Remember some of the comments in the past from RFK Jr. when it comes to vaccines. He is a vaccine skeptic. He has spread misinformation when it comes to HIV, AIDS, and he has said that in that role he would look to ban some vaccines. Now today we have had an invitation from President Biden to President-elect Trump to join him at some point at the White House. That is traditional, that traditional invitation extended. That was not the case for President Biden in 2020. Donald Trump did not extend that invitation. And we know also later today, this morning, President Biden will address the nation from the Rose Garden. For more on all of this from Washington, our correspondent Samira Hussein reports now.
The walk to the podium to deliver the speech that no politician wants to give. But Kamala Harris owed it to the country to concede the election.
A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States.
The party-like atmosphere from Tuesday vanished. Now people unable to hide their disappointment.
As the first female vice president, Kamala Harris has shattered glass ceilings. But one of the last remaining bastions of male privilege in America, the White House, remains intact.
Her history-making run for the White House coming to a crushing end. Ms. Harris left consoling her supporters.
To the young people who are watching, it is... I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed. But please know it's going to be okay.
A message of optimism they needed to hear.
She did everything that she needed to do. She really helped me feel better about the results. As I was feeling down, I was upset, I was lost, I cried. I didn't know what to do. So she really helped me to feel better, get some sense of confidence. Even though things didn't go particularly in the way that we wanted it to, there are still hopes and things still have a positive side.
I'm from Pennsylvania, so seeing it turn red, it broke my heart knowing that we were blue in 2020, we were progressive, we elected a Democratic governor in 2023, and I just don't understand. I was lost, I was hurt, I was heartbroken that this qualified woman, so perfect as a president, was just not chosen by our country, and it hurt me, it really did.
Chosen by the party, but not by the electorate. Samira Hussein, BBC News, Washington.
Well, as America begins the process of transitioning to a second Trump presidency, we will be hearing later today from President Joe Biden speaking in the Rose Garden there in Washington. And from there, our correspondent Jessica Parker has more.
We haven't had any indications of exactly what President Biden may say. I think perhaps you might hear some of the language reflected from when Kamala Harris made her concession speech. She talked about, amongst other things, how important it was to see the peaceful transfer of power in a democracy. So perhaps Joe Biden will refer to that. I think Democrats keen to make that point, particularly, of course, after Donald Trump back in 2020 refused to concede that he had lost that election to Joe Biden. But I think it will be a difficult moment for the outgoing president. Of course, Joe Biden wanted to run in this election, reluctantly pulled out after a disastrous debate performance. And now he faces the prospect, of course, of handing over power to a Republican. He himself is a Democrat, and a Republican, too, who could really start to demolish or change or untangle some of Joe Biden's legacy, whether that is on green policies, whether that is on Joe Biden's approach, as we were just hearing from Helena, to the war in Ukraine. So a slightly painful prospect probably for Joe Biden as he hands over power. And the mechanics of that are already getting underway in the sense that you see world leaders calling Donald Trump to congratulate him because they know that this man will soon, as of January 20th, be taking residence in the White House, taking over the most powerful nation on earth.
The BBC's Jessica Parker there in Washington, while my colleague Lewis Vaughan-Jones is there in London at the touchscreen analysing Donald Trump's pathway to the presidency.
Helena, thank you. Yeah, we're going to look at how Donald Trump did it. And in part, it was a case of fine margins across large areas. This is the map as things stand now. Red for Republican, red for Donald Trump. Keep an eye on these Midwestern states here at the top. Let's go back to the last election. Blue, Joe Biden won them. This time, Donald Trump flipped them red. Let's take a look at how that happened. Wisconsin was the state that took him over the line, took him over 270 electoral college votes, took him to the White House. Take a look at this map again. Remember, red here for Donald Trump, for the Republican Party in the largely rural areas. The blue areas here, largely Democrat, largely urban areas. Now, we're going to play a game of spot the difference here. This is 2024 election. Let's go back to 4 years ago. The map. You see Joe Biden won it, but did you spot any differences here in the actual map? Let's do it again. See who says politics can't be fun. Very, very little change. Eagle-eyed will have spotted the one flip there, which is Sauk County, Donald Trump taking that. But largely across this state, as many others, Donald Trump managed to increase his percentage of the vote 1-2 percentage points. Kamala Harris couldn't beat or match the effort of Joe Biden, and that led to the results that we see here. There were cases, though, of some bigger swings and some bigger flips. For interest, let's take a look at Texas and one remarkable story here. This is Starr County. Donald Trump winning handsomely, 57.7% to 41%. But just take a look at the previous elections here. This was 4 years ago. Biden actually won it, and indeed won it quite comfortably. And then you go back 2016. Look at that. Hillary Clinton, 79.1%. A remarkable transformation. Take a look at this area. Remember, blue Democrats. This is the bottom of Texas here. This is 2016. Keep an eye on the change here. Fast forward 4 years. There we go. The blue shrinking. And now the red Republicans, Donald Trump, taking over. Remarkable change there. So this is the map as we have it. You will see these last bits of grey. 3 states we're still waiting for the results. 2 of them swing states, Nevada, Arizona. Not quite enough data yet to project a win, but you can see these are the 7 swing states that we started the election with, 5 of them called all red for Republican Donald Trump. Nevada, Arizona, the one we're waiting for. Trump ahead in both of them, but we don't have a projected winner in those states just yet. But that is the state of the new US political map under President-elect Donald Trump.
Fascinating insights there, Lewis. It'll be very interesting to see how those last 2 states go. Many thanks indeed. Well, we can talk more now about the situation on the world stage, because we have heard from the Kremlin today saying that it is not ruling out the possibility that Russian President Vladimir Putin may speak to President-elect Donald Trump before he is officially inaugurated on the 20th of January. We haven't yet had official comment from Russian President Vladimir Putin with regards to Donald Trump returning to the White House, but he is due to speak at a news conference later. He may take questions, so we'll see if there is any mention. But we can discuss more about this now with BBC Monitoring's Russia chief, Vitaly Shevchenko. Great to have you with us, Vitaly. Just to begin with, I mean, we haven't heard anything official from Russian President Vladimir Putin, but what do you think he will be making of the fact that somebody who he knows, somebody who he has spoken to, we understand, fairly frequently, of course, not just when he was in the White House, will be returning there in Washington?
I think it's remarkable that the mood music that we're hearing from the Kremlin this time around is so much more restrained. Unlike 2016, nobody's uncorking champagne in the Russian parliament. And the official message that we've been hearing over the past couple of days is that America is still an unfriendly country. We need to wait and see what Donald Trump says and does. That's what officials have been saying, and that's what Russian media have been saying. But if you scratch that official surface, you begin to realize that what they're saying in public may not necessarily be what they're saying in private, in the corridors of power in the Kremlin. For example, Maria Zakharova, the spokeswoman for the foreign ministry in Moscow, yesterday she posted on Telegram, quoting from Kamala Harris, but strongly suggesting that this applies to Donald Trump's win. She quoted from the Bible as well, saying that now's the time to rejoice. Hallelujah is the word that she used. And on television, one commentator said that, okay, they may not be our friends, but things are going our way, and they can be our partners, that's the word that they used, in negotiations. And negotiations is the word that keeps coming up. Recently, Sergei Shoigu, the former Russian defense minister, who's now secretary of the Russian Security Council, says that now the West needs to sit down and talk to Russia. And the word negotiations and talks clearly alarms Kiev. What's there to talk about? That's the question that keeps being asked in Kiev. Will Donald Trump force Kiev to cede territory to Russia? Will any ceasefire or peace, however permanent or temporary it may be, will it come at the cost of Ukrainian territory? So these are the questions that people in Kiev, in America as well, across the globe, will be waiting for President Putin to answer when he speaks at the Valdai conference this afternoon.
So some strategic ambiguity there, it seems. Briefly, if you don't mind, what kind of stance do you think that we might see from Donald Trump, on the other hand, when it comes to Russia? Briefly, if you don't mind.
Well, people will remember that Donald Trump said he had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, and he is described as unpredictable, and that unpredictability can go either way.
Vitaly Shevchenko there from BBC Monitoring. Always good to get your analysis. Many thanks indeed. Well, as we were mentioning there, we are expecting later both a news conference from Russian President Vladimir Putin. We'll also be hearing from the current US President, of course, Joe Biden, speaking in the Rose Garden. And we'll wait to hear more if we start to understand with regards to how Donald Trump might start to fill his cabinet. Virginie, back to you.
Thanks very much, Helena. Helena Humphrey there, live for us in West Palm Beach in Florida. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Let's bring you up to date with developments in the Middle East, and officials in Lebanon say 55 people were killed on Wednesday during Israeli raids in the eastern Baalbek region. While the Lebanese Minister of Culture says the strikes also caused significant damage to an historic building, calling it an immediate loss for Lebanon as well as for World Heritage. Well, southern Beirut was also hit about an hour after Israel's army called for residents to leave 4 districts, including an area near the capital's international airport. Meanwhile, a rocket fired by Hezbollah from Lebanon killed an Israeli man in northern Israel. Well, with the latest on all of those developments, here's our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette, who's in Jerusalem.
In the midst of this earth-shattering news, which of course has affected developments here in Israel and across the Middle East as well, watching the election which will bring Donald Trump to power in the White House in January for the second time, the other major news continues unabated. And as you mentioned, the Israeli attacks in Lebanon, focusing on the east, on the historic city of Baalbek, where Lebanese officials are expressing concern that an Ottoman-era market, a very historic landmark, has been damaged in Israeli bombing. More bombardments in the capital, Beirut. Real concern yesterday during those bombardments about what was hit and what the damage would be, what would be the civilian cost of yet another bombing in a densely populated capital. And there's no sign yet that this is going to come to an end anytime soon. Just before the elections took place, Virginia, in the United States, President Joe Biden sent his top officials to the region to try to make one last push to get a ceasefire in Lebanon. It didn't work. And of course, the question now is with Donald Trump coming to power again in his very close relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu, what will be the pace of these wars in Gaza and in Lebanon? And of course, most of all, what will happen with expected strikes against Iran?
And Lise, we know that Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu do have a good relationship. What is the Israeli government hoping and expecting from a Trump presidency?
This morning, the Israeli media are full of analyses about the gamble that Prime Minister Netanyahu made, that the accusation is, and there's evidence to support it, that Prime Minister Netanyahu was delaying decisions on how to wind up the Gaza war, what to do in Lebanon, as I mentioned, what targets to hit, what would be the long-term goals of the attacks against Iran, waiting until there was a Trump presidency, because Israelis who, in the vast majority, were hoping for a Trump win in these elections. They saw in the first term how Donald Trump really carried out some of the long-standing Israeli demands to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, to recognize the annexation of the Golan Heights, to pull out of the landmark Iran nuclear deal. And they're very much expecting more of that now. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, so quick off the mark to congratulate Donald Trump. He was one of the first foreign leaders, if not the first foreign leader, to speak to him last night. And there is a sense, Regini, not only is he excited by the prospect of working with Donald Trump, he also knows that he's very unpredictable and can be quick to anger. Prime Minister Netanyahu hasn't forgotten that when he's quickly congratulated Joe Biden on his election victory in 2020, Donald Trump was infuriated. He likes loyalty.
That's our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette there. Now let's turn to politics in Germany, and the country's main opposition parties calling for a vote of confidence. Well, the Christian Democrats say snap elections should be held as early as December. It follows the collapse of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's coalition government. Well, the Chancellor's from the Social Democratic Party. And all of this came as the Chancellor fired his finance minister, Christian Lindner, who is from one of the coalition parties. He works with him, the Free Democrats. Well, Christian Lindner is delivering a news conference now after his firing. Let's have a listen in. Oh, apologies, we don't have a translation, but he is speaking now to the country, and we will stay across that because, of course, it will be interesting to hear what he has to say after he was fired by the German Chancellor. There's been a lot more pressure on Chancellor Scholz following, of course, as well, regional elections as well. And there's already been pressure on Germany's economy as well. And Christian Lindner there, his Free Democratic Party, said it had left the coalition. So the government there hanging on a thread. Olaf Scholz saying he'll now call a confidence vote for the 15th of January, which could allow for elections to be held by the end of March next year. But a lot of it hanging in the balance there. We will have a listen across to that news conference, and we'll bring you those updates when we have them. Now, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says he hopes that America's allies will be able to work together with Donald Trump. He made the comment just before a summit of European leaders got underway. Well, they're currently discussing Donald Trump's victory and its impact on the security of Europe. Well, Mr. Rutte expressed particular concern over Russia enlisting North Korea's help when it comes to the war in Ukraine.
One of the things they are doing is delivering technology to North Korea, which is now threatening in the future the mainland of the US, continental Europe, but also our partners in the Indo-Pacific, Japan, for example, and the Republic of Korea. So these are really dangerous new developments, and we need to discuss that today. But I also look forward to sit down with President Trump and to navigate how collectively we'll make sure that we face this threat and that we keep our part of the world safe.
Mark Rutte there. Well, our Europe editor Katja Adler is at the summit in Budapest for us.
This was always going to be a big meeting. These meetings between EU leaders and non-EU European leaders. So Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, will be here, as you said, President Zelensky as well. They happen twice a year, and they were started up by France's president after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine to look at challenges towards Europe. You may be wondering why I'm in a football stadium. It is being hosted here in the Hungarian capital, Budapest, for security reasons. But yes, Donald Trump, as the incoming president in the United States, is seen by many of the leaders coming here as a challenge to Europe, a security challenge, because traditionally Europe looks to the United States to have its back on defense, whether it's this more expansive, aggressive Russia, whether it's having Ukraine's back and military support for Ukraine. But Donald Trump is absolutely not a fan of NATO, the transatlantic military alliance. Also, in terms of trade, for the EU, the US is its biggest trade partner, and Donald Trump is protectionist and has been clear he loves slapping tariffs on imports. That is very bad news for already sluggish European economies.
Katja Adler, our Europe editor at the summit in Budapest for us. Well, here in the UK, and the Bank of England's widely expected to cut interest rates again. In August, the bank cut the rate for the first time in over 4 years by 1/4 of a percentage point to just 5%. A further cut's expected as inflation, the rate at which prices are rising, is slowing down. Now, a story in Australia which you might want to pay attention to, and that is that the country's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, says his government will introduce new laws in Parliament banning children under the age of 16 from using social media. Mr Albanese described the legislation as for the mums and dads, said it was drawn up in consultation with social media firms and that the onus would be on the industry to enforce it. If enacted, Australia would be the first country in the world to introduce such a ban.
Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it. I've spoken to thousands of parents, grandparents, aunties and uncles. They, like me, are worried sick about the safety of our kids online. And I want Australian parents and families to know that the government has your back.
Well, before we go, reminder of our top story. Of course, we're still watching developments in the United States. That's the scene in West Palm Beach overlooking Donald Trump's residence, Mar-a-Lago, where the president-elect of the United States is currently preparing to select his future government when he takes office in January. Meanwhile, we're going to be hearing from President Joe Biden, who will deliver an address to the nation later.